Today's devotion is titled Hospitable Influence, and we're on day 261. We're on September the 18th, and today's morning rinse completes the book of First Peter. So we are reading First Peter 3 through 5, and the featured verse is First Peter 4:9. Be hospitable to one another without complaint. This was an ouch to me. Um, so as we were raising our kids, one of our desires was to have our home be a place where our kids and their friends chose to hang out at. Even throughout their adult years, we have always wanted our home to be a place where our children would come, bring their friends, hang out, have parties, hangouts, play pool down in the basement and, whatever other games that they wanted. And my husband and I kind of had this idea that we would rather create an environment that they wanted to be in versus, always leaving to go hang out at someone else's home. We wanted to be the home. And as they have grown up, we learned through, I guess, trial and error. We learned through default. We learned through mistakes. We learned that, there was a way to actually make this happen. And we learned kind of some tricks on how to make this happen. Now, admittedly, so we have not always been successful, but we have gotten better through practice. Now, we have 3 kids, and 2 of them are out of the house, and one is even in a different state, which is Haley. I mention her on this podcast a lot. She's in Texas, of all places, and so we don't have that opportunity for her. And then my second daughter is in college in Columbia, Missouri, and so I just have one adult child in our home right now, finishing up, career hunting and the whole bit. And so we've kind of passed that stage, but as they grew up, we did get better at how to make it happen when they were through their teen years and whatever. Again, we haven't always made successful choices in it, and we weren't always successful, but we did get better through practice. One really fun thing that we did for all you parents or grandparents out there is around Easter time, instead of having an egg hunt for children, we actually had a teenage flashlight egg hunt. And it was actually so successful in our neighborhood that every year people would traditionally expect in our neighborhood to have this teenage flashlight egg hunt. And the way that it worked was we would have all the teenagers come over, they'd hang out, we'd have dinner for them, and their parents would come as well. And at the time of us hiding the eggs, they would all get sent down to our basement, and the dads would go out and hide all of the eggs. And there were several houses in the neighborhood right adjacent to us that were starting to participate. And so the dads would then go out and hide all of the eggs in the dark. And every kid needed to have a flashlight and a bag. And so they ran out into the dark and found the eggs in the dark, and it was just such a fun time, and they enjoyed it, and they got to, have their own way of having an Easter egg hunt. So it was a teenage flashlight Easter egg hunt. And so modifying your life based on the ages of your children helps to be creative in how you make your home something that your teenage kid will, have fun and bring their friends to. That desire as our kids grew up just continued to grow with wanting their friends to come over. And we knew that our plan was actually working when their friends began driving to our house by choice to hang out, whether that be in the basement playing games or just hanging out or getting a meal. We knew that our plan was working when that started to happen, when they got their driver's license and they would just show up at our house. In fact, my son Ezekiel, he in high school had a group of 6 friends who really enjoyed hanging out together. In fact, they would take turns going over to one another's houses and have an all-nighter with playing games and what have you. And our home was one of the homes that they really enjoyed, coming over, and so they would plan sleepovers, which entailed playing online games and eating pizza and munching on snacks and then falling asleep around 4 a.m. in the morning. So it was pretty cool to actually see kind of our plan implemented, if you will. And much to our delight, that group of boys enjoyed doing this, at our home, sometimes more than their own actual home. And during nice weather, sometimes it was even several times a month that they would come over, and they would make this long-standing wish to come over to our house, and a plan. And so then it made this desire that Nathan and I had when our children were younger become a reality. And you would think that, knowing what I'm just sharing with you, knowing how much we really wanted to implement this in our life and how much we really wanted this to happen and how we made things occur and changed some things that we did in order to make this happen. And when we started seeing that it was a reality, you would think that it was something that we would, we're so happy for. And yes, we were grateful. However, at the time that I was writing this devotion, back, it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I found myself complaining to my son about the very thing that I was wishing for. I wasn't complaining to him that the kids were coming over to our house, but I was complaining that they were teenagers and they were acting like teenagers, and teenagers sometimes will have minimal regard to picking up. They will have minimal regard to, making sure that things are clean when they leave or what have you. I mean, they don't do that to their rooms, so how can I expect them to come over to our house and do that? You can expect, but it wasn't really happening. It just was a minimal regard. And so, we shouldn't be shocked about this, right? So I understand that it is perfectly acceptable to expect frequent guests to have some level of standard when they are in your home, like throwing trash away or putting blankets back where they found them. And I was reminding my son to help me keep these standards with his friends, and that, I wasn't anti-hospitable when I was talking to him about it. And I was reminding him that when you have friends over, it's not anti-hospitable, especially when you have regular guests coming over, just pick up. But I was complaining about it, and I was complaining in an annoying fashion while I was reprimanding him in an unloving demeanor. And that is what I was guilty of. Boys will be boys. And just as this is true, a parent needs to be a parent. Now, this obviously means teaching standards in a loving way and remembering the value of being hospitable, no matter the situation that you're in, especially when we go over to other people's houses. We want to teach our children, if you use this blanket, fold it back up again and put it away. Even if the host says, don't worry about it, I'll do it. You teach your kids to go ahead and do it because they're picking up after themselves. And, being hospitable is not about the host. It's about the guest. You never know the influence that you're going to have by creating a warm, hospitable, welcoming environment that is bathed in love and acceptance of those walking through your door. And while we want to teach our children to be really great guests, and if we teach them how to be really great guests, then we're ultimately teaching them how to be a really great host when they get older. But not everybody gets taught these things. And so, therefore, it's not about the host, it's about the guest when they come in. We can't expect all these perfect things to align up when we have guests over. And, it is, of course, acceptable to ask, especially if they're regular guests and they're your kids' friends, hey, can you pick that up or throw your trash away? Yes. So there's this balance that you have to do. And when you're creating this wonderful environment at your home and wanting children to come over or your family to come over, then I had to learn that I needed to cease from complaining and embrace my influence over their lives. And I had to realize that there is something about our home that is causing these people to come to our home. And there's something about our atmosphere as a whole that is causing my children's friends to want to be at our home. And they may not be able to put their finger on it, or they might not be able to say, oh my goodness, it's because of this or this or this. Or it could be that your home has a different atmosphere than my home, and I'm needing to take a break from my home for a bit. I don't know the answer to those questions, but the reality of it is you are creating an atmosphere that is causing those people to be influenced by you no matter where they're at in life. And you never know the environment that your guests are coming from that they need to have a reprieve from for your home. And another thing that occurred that I think I've mentioned before in another episode was that when we moved into our home that we are currently residing in now, we moved in the month of February. And as the springtime rolled over and we continued to get closer and closer to warm weather, the neighboring children who were right at about the age of our two youngest kids, they were coming out of the woodwork and they were wanting to meet our children. And lo and behold, we invited one or two of them over for hot dogs and grilling one night. And then Nathan pulled out the Gaga ball pit that he had made, and the neighbors started coming over and wanting to play Gaga ball. And, then it came to coming over several times a week. And then there were certain times where there was somebody coming to our doorstep throughout that summer almost every night. And there were times where up to 15 teenagers from the neighborhood were in our backyard on our patio waiting for a hot dog to be grilled for them from Nathan because they were hungry or whatever reason why they wanted the hot dog. And it was such a neat experience. And now all of them have grown up and some have moved away and gotten married and gone to college and whatever. And so we don't have that opportunity anymore. But there are other ways that you can actually be an influence. And so I'm encouraging you, as whether you are a parent or whether you are a grandparent or whether you are just somebody in your church that wants to have people over, we are to be hospitable to one another without complaint. And I had to learn that the hard way. I had to learn that, yes, I can request that Ezekiel's friends who are coming over, pick up and, just say, hey, boys, pick up here, whatever. I can do that in a loving fashion without complaining about it, which is what I was doing. And so I had to learn the hard way that, we are to be hospitable to one another without complaint. And if there's something that, a person is doing that, drives our nerves a little bit anxious or whatever, then take that to God and to ask him, how can I be hospitable without having a complaining spirit or having an anxious spirit? Because the reality of it is, just like what I titled today and what 1 Peter 4:9 says, we have a hospitable influence and we never know what that influence is going to be. And so understanding that and knowing that our presence and our atmosphere and our home can cause influence in other people's lives, and we might not know what they're going through, or we might not ever know how we are influencing their lives in a positive way. So that is what I wanted to talk to you about today and just tell you some real stories about me and Nathan and some of the. Were we always perfect? No. And were there times where our kids didn't want to be at home? Yeah. But we grew, and it eventually came to a point where, yes, our children wanted to bring their friends over to our house. So today's challenge to dig deeper is to invite a person or family over to your home, not for a social gathering, but for just a casual time of fellowship. That is your challenge. Reach out to somebody, invite that person or family over to your home to hang out, feed them some dinner, and just be with them. Don't stress about the preparation, but keep your spirit open to the little things that you will learn throughout the process of it. And you never know what your heart will do when you start to be hospitable. In fact, there was a time where when Nathan was not on the road so much, there was a time where Nathan and I would look on our calendar and we wanted to invite somebody over at least once a month to our home. And it got to a point where it was starting to get a little more frequent, but it was so cool because we were able to invite people over, invite families over, feed them a meal, bring their kids. And it was such a neat goal of ours to have people over at our home, which is why we have homes, right? I mean, yes, it's a temple of our, it's a temple of God in our family, but we also have, maybe there's a reason for God to have you planted right where you are at in your neighborhood and in your city and in your church community. Maybe you want to invite a pastor over. I mean, very rarely do pastors get invited over to someone's house for dinner. It isn't that common. And so in my world anyway, and when I was growing up as a pastor's kid, I don't remember hardly ever going over to people's houses for dinner. It didn't happen a ton. And so invite people over. And that is your challenge today. Find somebody to invite over to your home for a casual time of fellowship. Don't stress about the preparation, but just see what you are going to learn through the process, especially if you don't have hospitality as a gift. And this is kind of something outside of your scope of things, or maybe it is a gift and you've just kind of gotten off, off and gotten distracted and done other things. Well, why don't you start it back up again? And what better way to start back up again than today? So that's your challenge. See who you can invite over for dinner. See who you can invite over for just a casual time of fellowship, and be open to what the Spirit of the Lord is teaching you, and make sure that you are hospitable and are aware of your influence over that person or that family's life, and don't complain about a thing. That's your challenge. And I look forward to hearing how this goes. And maybe you will even get to a point where you are wanting somebody into your house every couple of weeks or every month or something of that nature. And I can't wait to hear about your journey as you are hospitable with your influence without complaining. And as you pull out your journal tonight and you are having your evening reflection, I want you to write down who you are inviting. So who did you reach out to? Who are you inviting? And any thoughts that you have about the planning process. Like, what are you going to do? Are you excited about it? And in fact, one of the things that Nathan and I had at one point was we had a list of all the people that we wanted to actually come over to our home and invite. And we just started going down the list and inviting those people on our list. So he listed off like 5 people and I listed off 5. And then we started to invite them over and plan our social gatherings, if you will. And we have some really good memories of friends coming over to our home. And, with Nathan's work schedule, we've kind of gotten off of that. But we would like to actually, do it again. It's such a fun thing. And so I want you to write down who you are inviting over and when they're coming over, and any thoughts that you have about the planning process, what you're going to do. Because next year, when you open up your journal and you read who you invited over, and you know, maybe some of the notes that you had regarding your night with them, your evening with them, maybe it'll just continue to encourage you. Don't stop being hospitable, and make sure that when we're hospitable, we hone in on what our influence is over those people's lives, and then never complain. And so I hope this encouraged you and inspired you to be more hospitable, and be more hospitable without complaining, and learn from some of the things that I learned growing up, you know, or raising my kids, and where we're at right now in our journey. And I know that it's something that I long to do. I love having people over, and it's such a fun time also too, to just get to know people better. It's also such a wonderful time to, you know, learn about where they're at, and allow for your heart to be shared as well. So hopefully you take on this challenge and enjoy this journey as you are hospitable without complaining, understanding your influence over people's lives. We are ending the book of First Peter, and we're going to read Second Peter tomorrow. And so if you don't have my devotional, and you or have somebody that you want to purchase the devotional for, be sure and get the link in the show notes. And also too, if you have talked about being hospitable, or had this conversation with a friend, be sure and share this episode with them, and maybe that will encourage them as well. And until tomorrow, keep rinsing, reflecting, and repeating. God bless you.